Oh man. Well, let's just get into it. Let's get into Fisher Stevens as Ben Jabatuya or whatever. Like Ben is his character, who is Indian, but Fisher Stevens is not Indian. So they doll him up in makeup. They make his skin a little darker, and he sports an really horrible Indian accent.
Yeah.
But I think that's on purpose, because I'll get into the trivia here in a little bit, but I do want to talk about Fisher Stevens because he apparently had like just a few weeks to prepare for, like, he was going to be one character, and then the guy who was going to be the Indian guy dropped out. And they're like, "Oh, can you do this?" And he said, "I guess so." And so he worked with, like, I think I'll get into it, but yeah, he worked on an accent, and this is what the product of it was.
Interesting.
So I'm conflicted with this because here's my thing. In this new era that we're in, David, there's this pull of being like, "Oh, I'm offended for you." But I feel like this film actually is justified in being offending for other people. Like,
I don't think it is.
No? Well, okay. So so why do you think that?
Because it doesn't affect me one iota that Fisher Stevens played an Indian guy. Like, I don't care. If I knew some Indian people, and those specific Indian people that I knew were upset at his portrayal of an Indian character, we could maybe have a conversation about that.
Okay.
But outside of that, I just don't care.
Yeah.
I just don't care at all.
I think of I say that because I think of people that I know who are from India, or I know somebody who originates from Sri Lanka, and I'm like, oof, I probably wouldn't want to watch this with them.
But do you know for a fact that they would be offended?
No,
by it?
I don't. So that's not the conversation.
That's the thing is, I don't know any Indian people very well, but I know I'm acquainted with a few of them, and like until those people specifically, I have a conversation with them specifically about the Fisher Stevens portrayal of an Indian being offensive. Like,
it's so niche. Like
I don't I don't care. Like, the larger conversation to be had about it, I don't care. Yeah. And I wish people wouldn't have the larger conversation, because it honestly, I feel like it doesn't solve the problem.
I feel like because we've had
canceling Apu,
that's
like
ridiculous.
Apu is an offensive stereotype of an Indian convenience store owner voiced by a white guy.
Yeah.
Canceling Apu did not remove racism from the world. It didn't even subtract a small amount of racism from the world. It, in fact, the level of racism in the world has remained at the same level it was since Apu was canceled. So all these larger conversations about is this offensive, or is this appropriate, or is this problematic? All this stuff that we as a culture are preoccupying ourselves with isn't actually making anything better.
That's correct. And there's nothing that can come out of that conversation, I think, because this was 86. This was in the past. It's been done. Like, you can't change anything. It's not like they're going to go on to Disney Plus or wherever you can stream this, which you can't stream this anywhere. You have to buy or rent it.
Which is hilarious.
Which was hilarious.
I was trying to watch it.
Yeah, we were trying to watch it on the DVD, and it did the thing when we tried to watch The Rock. It's a very early DVD, and the Xbox out there wouldn't format it right, or zoom in or fit to screen. So you're watching basically a 4:3 aspect ratio DVD, but you're watching it in widescreen. So it's like just smaller in the middle of the screen. So we had to buy. David, thank you for buying it on YouTube so we can watch the HD version.
You know what's funny?
Yeah.
Is right before David said, I bought it, I was trying to get mine to work and the internet was slow. Right after he said, I bought it, my card went through and I'm on it.
You own it now. We can rewatch it again.
It's on my YouTube account too. So
Okay, so yeah, because I tried to buy it first because I'm like, don't worry, guys.
yes,
I
that
got
was going
this.
on.
And my Google account for some reason wouldn't rent it. And I tried to buy the the standard definition, wouldn't work for $5. I tried to buy the HD version, wouldn't work. I did it multiple times. I checked my bank account, nothing happened. So just there was an error.
Was it
and
the
David's like,
card?
okay, fine. You failed. I'm gonna do it. And Chelsea's like, Adelaide's
Hold
like,
my
oh, I'm
beer,
gonna do
Jake.
it too. And as David's like, I bought it, and Adelaide silently in her head was like, me too.
Well, it was like slow, and I'm like, oh well, I'll just hit X, and I'm like, it's not working. And then he said, oh, I just bought it, and then it went bing, and I'm like, oh, I guess we all
Yeah.
own this movie now on YouTube.
At least I want to.
You can watch it as many times as our heart desires.
Yeah. Okay, so back to Fisher Stevens. I have an unabashed love for this actor, and I bring that up and I say that, David, because it made me rethink of that conversation, but you made me kind of realize in your explanation that, yeah, it is kind of like, we don't need to be offended for other people. Like,
Right.
let them be offended by what they're offended by. Because here's the thing, Apu is a great example. Like, I thought it was so stupid. Even the dude who played Apu for years, who's just some white dude, was like, yeah,
well, I
we
mean,
probably
Hank Azaria is more than just some white dude.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm not familiar. I wasn't familiar with his
Excuse you.
work, like the meme. I wasn't familiar with, Hank Azusa or whatever his name is. But anyway,
I'm just kidding. I'm not. I'm not that big of a Simpsons
I was like,
fan.
I thought you were serious.
I'm not that big of a Simpsons fan.
But that's a great example. Done for years. Nobody cared. In fact, he did a really good job. And he's a good voice actor. But because of the era we lived in during that time, people are like, we need to get offended by this. This all started with that chick in Africa that made that joke online and she got canceled after she got to Africa. It's like, I feel like that's not relevant anymore. Like we already had the conversation. If you go on YouTube and you figure some of this stuff out, you can find, or on the internet in general, you can find out and explore this conversation for yourself if you really want to, Mr. and Mrs. Snarp Fangle person. But I feel like, yeah, it's like racially insensitive is what I would consider it. But man, the guy's funny. And man, he does a good job.
We did laugh a lot.
And I laughed a lot.
portrayal.
I thought he was great. And look, I get it. It's like 86. They weren't thinking about that. But I don't even think they need to think about that today. Like, dude, look at Family Guy. Look at Robot Chicken. There is so much messed up stuff in those like series.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just look at American Dad. Like that has tons of stuff like that in there. And it just is rolled
You
on
mean like
through.
race jokes and
Race
stuff like
jokes
that, yeah.
and just obscenely racist jokes, which are hilarious. And we all laughed at them. And we've had this conversation, David, how a generation, mostly millennials, but also Gen Z too, and some X, were raised on Family Guy and all this other stuff. And they're like, I'm offended for you. Because it's some social credit that you get from somebody's opinion.
Yeah, that's really the thing is all this stuff is about people, all this talk about stuff being problematic mostly focuses on people being offended on other people's behalf.
Yeah.
But that doesn't, like being offended on someone else's behalf doesn't actually accomplish any good.
No.
All it does is it makes you feel like you're a good person.
Right. And then I think your actions and what you do after that really says a lot. Really what you are as a person or who you are as a person.
Yeah, that's what you see over and over again.
I think
is
there's
all
also oh go ahead, sorry.
a lot of the people who really seem to like push the conversation about race, like it turns out that they're more racist than the people that they want to call out.
Mhm.
Like this is what I notice a lot of the times. It's like we were talking about, black people in film for iRobot, and it's just like there's so many people who want to paint one segment of society as like, oh, they hate black people or they fear black people or whatever. They're backwards. and but we're not like that. We're we're
Right.
working on ourselves.
Right.
We're like we're open to having those conversations. But then when you actually like look into who they are as people, it's like it becomes clear that they view themselves as like the saviors
Right.
of these black people, that these black people are like just like can't get by on their own because they're just not like they just don't have all the privileges of white people, and they just can't make it in this world, and they need our help to lift
Right.
them up. And it's like, no, that's actual racism.
Exactly.
Yeah.
To think that black people are so beneath you that you have to be offended on their behalf and you have to speak for them,
Right.
and you have to fight their battles.
And it goes against what. It's funny how we're recording this on Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Like,
Oh, happy Martin Luther King
Happy
Jr. Day.
Like, it goes against his things. Like, treat everybody equal. Don't like
Right.
if you're gonna give special treatment, give it to everybody.
Yeah. I think there's just a quick note on David's commentary there is like, yeah, it's very selfish, this need to be the ally. But are you really trying to just be an ally and just be there for people when they need you? Or are you going forth and making these claims to make yourself the center of attention kind of situation? Yeah, it's all about selfishness and
Insecurity, I would say,
and
too.
feeling special, I think. I don't know.
Yeah.
And also it gets into like sort of this weird like fetish for collectivization
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that people seem to have. It's like people say they want to be an ally, they want to I want to be an ally to black people. I want to be an ally to trans people, or whatever marginalized group that they want to be an ally for. And it's like, that's meaningless.
Mm-hmm.
That's utterly meaningless. I don't want to be an ally for some group where I think of them as all the people in that group as some kind of monolith. I want to be an ally, to use the verbiage, for the people that I know and the people that I care about and the people that I interact with,
Yeah.
who might need me in some situation to be an ally for them, no matter what group they belong to.
Preach, brother, preach.
Yeah, it's just, I don't like this hyper collectivization sort of thing that seems to be happening in the culture, where black people are a monolith, gay people are a monolith. It's like, no, people are their own individuals. It's like we were talking about introverts versus extroverts a little bit before, and it's like you have a lot of people who define themselves as either they belong to this group of what they call introverts, and the others belong to this group called extroverts. And I'm only privy to this because I know people who are, kind of into that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I come across their posts on social media. And so I'm like from the outside looking in, trying to understand this mentality. And I'm like, I don't even know if I am an introvert or an extrovert. I can't even figure out by the criteria that I see in the interactions that these people have online, like where I would even fit in this group. It's like, and so I think I just got to a point where I gave up trying to belong to a group.
Yeah.
Like, I don't see myself as part of some sort of collective of white people, or collective of males, or collective of straight people, or whatever.
Ideologies or whatever.
Yeah, it's like I gave up trying to fit into, slot myself into a group a long time ago, and it's so much more freeing when you stop thinking of people in terms of categories, because now, if I'm trying to find common ground with somebody, it comes down to a conversation between them and me, and what groups we belong to don't have to be a part of that, don't have to be a hindrance to that. It's like the whole thing with Fisher Stevens playing a East Indian character, or not East Indian, but whatever he is.
Yeah.
Indian of some kind. I don't remember there's some kind of subdivision there. I can't remember what he was supposed to be. But
From Bakersfield.
Yeah.
yeah, from Bakersfield, yes. Bakersfield, Indian. No.
Yeah, he's like, where are you from? I'm originally from Bakersfield.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's it doesn't make the world a better place for me to think about the impact that his portrayal of the character has on East Indians or Indians in general as a group. Like it does nobody any good to think in those terms. But if I were to meet a person from India or a person of Indian descent, and we started having a conversation, and they ended up telling me that they were extremely offended by Fisher Stevens' portrayal of this character, it's like, okay, we could talk about that specifically.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We could have a conversation about your particular offense, and maybe we could come to an understanding between ourselves. But we don't have to involve the group.
Right.
The group doesn't have to be involved. In fact, thinking in terms of groups would be a hindrance to that.
I think it's interesting you brought up Apu from Simpsons, because that blew up this last year?
Oh,
that
it blew up 5 years ago.
Well, there was some kind of conversation happening earlier last year where they were talking to voice actors, like a whole bunch of different ethnicities and stuff, asking them their opinion on, like, how do you feel, like, Phil Lamar, black voice actor who voiced Samurai Jack and everything, who was a Japanese man in the cartoon.
Yeah.
They asked his opinion on it because there was some group of some kind that got upset that in the past white people had played cartoon characters that are of other ethnicities. They said, what is your opinion on it? He says, if they're a good voice actor, go for it. And I think it was he brought up The Simpsons, and I don't think he had any qualms with white people playing characters of other ethnicities, because he's like, they did a great job. If they can do a great job, let them do it. It was great.
And Phil Lamar does a fantastic job as Samurai Jack. I mean, I know I'm biased personally because I grew up watching that as well. But
yeah, I love that movie or that show.
But dude, Phil Lamar's amazing. Yeah. Like, he can play a hardened veteran Green Lantern, but also play Samurai Jack. Like, he's really good at what he does. And two things on what you said, David, that came to my mind is, number one, the reason why people focus so much on the group and like associate with that, because they're trying to find their identity, because they're insecure in their identity, especially when they're up and coming. And that's one thing that society or ideological groups have done, is create this distraction about race and finding a collectivism kind of thing, and by race or whatever, because it distracts you from the main thing, what's important. Some of the libertarians out there will say, well, it's classism, obviously. No, guys, come on. But I think it's because when you're trying to find who you are as in your identity as a person, you latch onto these things, and then you get the weird ass thing where people are like, I can't remember what it is. There's a educational term for it in higher education. But it's like, you're this and this and this, and that's your intersectionality. And I've been exposed to that for years working in the education system. And I just don't agree with it. Like, I feel like life is way more nuanced. And that's their method of bringing nuance to that group mentality. But it doesn't work. It's trying to mesh two different things. And it's in this weird aspect. But that's just one thing. Number two is it's interesting because, man, we're getting really deep on Short Circuit. But anyway, it's interesting because you have people like Phil Lamar be like, look, he said it as it is. Like, if you're a good actor, then do it and act, and then just, if you can pull it off, you can pull it off. Now that's voice acting. I feel like in Hollywood, there's a lot of people who ask those questions that don't want to like get in quotes canceled or lose opportunities for jobs and stuff. So they'll say safe answers. I don't think Phil Lamar did that. I think like he nailed it on the head. I personally feel like, in my opinion, he can get away with that answer because it's voice acting, but an actual acting.
Right.
Like, have you guys seen the meme of Black Panther, but played by Ryan Gosling?
Yes.
Like that, like recasted T'Challa.
I can't remember
as Ryan
what
Gosling.
the
They're like, that doesn't work.
instead of Wakanda Forever, I can't remember what it was.
TikTokian Forever or something.
No, it had something to do with like a frat house or something.
Okay, yeah.
Like,
but I also think in this conversation we're having, I think of that video that goes around where it's the dude who's dressed up as a generic looking mariachi fella with a fake mustache and everything. And he says, hey, like he asks, do you find my costume offensive? And he's asking just like college students.
I have seen that video, yeah.
And they're like, yeah, it's offensive. And then he just goes into like the side of town where all the Latino and Mexican people are. And he asks them, and dude, these people are just trying to be polite. Like, they're just saying like, no, it's not racist at all. And they're probably being honest, but also like, I think it's about the conversation. Like, and it's not about like, I think it's about the I think it's like, that's the point of that video. It's like he goes to the Mexican side and they all say, no, it's not offensive at all. What are you thinking? Like, you look great, whatever,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head though when you talk about identity, because unfortunately, Western culture has become so individualistic and fragmented that the kind of strong bonds that people would form that gave them a sense of identity in many ways are absent from our culture today. Like, kind of in our circle of people, it's a little different.
Yeah.
But in a lot of environments, especially in big cities, where people move away from their families for job opportunities or whatever, you have this sort of thing develop where people are just there in this environment and they have no connection to one another because they all left somewhere to come here for economic reasons.
Right.
And so they're just these fragmented, free-floating individuals just milling around in this soup of people. And so there's a real identity crisis in that they're searching for connection, they're searching for meaning, they're searching for who they are.
Yeah.
Right.
And what our culture doesn't have any answers for them because our culture has spent so much time trying to deconstruct things like family, things like tradition, things like faith.
Yep.
That really the only answer that's left is to sort of latch on to whatever group identity or movement that makes you feel like you belong somewhere.
Right.
And I think you have a lot of people who are with not so great intentions exploiting that to try and stoke up conflict over these issues.
Yep. And I feel like that's the key right there is they're taking advantage of people who are looking for a home, who are looking for acceptance in whatever form they want to find it. And my heart goes out to them but also I have to acknowledge reality and say that if the person does a good job in the role, that person does a good job in the role. Doesn't matter if it can affirm or not affirm your life. Like, I've always brought Last of Us 2 up in this podcast, and I'll bring it up again. I don't really resonate to the way that game's written in terms of the ideological themes it's trying to say, in terms of the characters they're trying to uphold because of their identity, in quotes, whether it be gay, lesbian, or trans. I don't agree with the writing, but I can find the good art in that. I love the combat. I actually love some of the characters in the story. There's good to be found in there. Like, if you can make a freaking good story, make it in there. That's why I don't give crap to stuff like In the Heights or anything, because yeah, multicultural, you're being exposed to this, but that is a really good musical and does a really good job of also showing this culture and what it might have looked like to a person who never experienced it. So I kind of like can look past these writers in Hollywood that take the kind of ideological stances and what people have associated to be woke, but to also find nuance in that, because I feel like that's what we're getting at. There's nuance to your identity in itself. So why do we have to group everything together? And that's what it leads to. Is any time, and that's why I don't like what was the word you said? I keep forgetting to it.
Intersectionality.
Intersectionality, because it's surface level. I'm a farmer. I'm straight. I am conservative. What have you? Like, it's like
I'm robosexual.
Yeah, it could be like, it's surface level. It's not getting to the heart of things because society has deconstructed the family, tradition, and most importantly, faith. Because I think all of us in this room agree that you have to have your identity centered in Christ, and you will find great fulfillment in that. But the world tries to find a replacement for it, and that's their replacement.
It's funny you said Hollywood, because I'm like, Hollywood's only goal, no matter what movement is happening, is for money.
That's exactly.
So whether if woke is not popular,
well, people are talking about this woke thing. Well, what's
right.
considered that? Let's bring Ibram X. Kendi and
How much
write
green
something.
can we bring in?
Yeah, exactly.
That's really
How can we
the
take
thing
advantage
too.
of the situation?
That's really the thing too, is all these conversations about racism and intersectionality and blah 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 they're really only being pushed into people's attentions because there's people behind the scenes who want to make money.
And with that, let's continue our discussion of Short Circuit, because man, that went deep.
The title of this episode is going to be like
Fisher
spoiler,
Stevens sparks the race
deep.
debate
Yeah.
on Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Okay, so I'm gonna get into the IMDb trivia.